So, how do you go from being an English teacher in Taiwan earning less than $1,500 a month to running a business that could potentially earn billions of dollars and is getting launched publicly? That's exactly what you'll learn today in this interview with Don Wells, CEO and founder of Onfolio. Tell us about your story and how you originally started as an English teacher, right? And then moved on to starting your own business and now launching on the NASDAQ.
Yeah, I've told my sort of English teacher in Taiwan story quite a few times. So I'm sure there'll be some people watching this who haven't heard it, but for those who've heard it a bunch of times, we can kind of just summarize it by saying I had a job and I didn't want to do that job anymore. So I wanted to try something else, and I tried a bunch of things, and I found my way to affiliate marketing. And so I didn't really have a budget, didn't really have any money. Like, my job was basically paying my rent and my bills. My credit card was maxed out. It was like £1,500 overdrawn. So I was basically like no budget at all. And affiliate marketing back then was maybe a little bit easier than it is now to start with no budget, but you can still do it with very little budget now. So I just researched like how to pick a niche, how to do keyword research. Wasn't very good at it, but basically I think I was teaching about 25 hours a week plus say 5 hours of prep, so 30 hours a week. My school was 5-minute walk from my house, so I had a lot of other time where I wasn't commuting or working that I was free. So I would just write all my own content. I think I had 3 different websites on the go, and I would just spend an hour a day researching stuff, and then the rest of the time just writing. I think I tried to write 3 articles a day or 3 articles a week per site, so 9 articles a week, something like that. And that was it, really. I didn't understand about link building or like guest posts or anything like that. So it was really just writing content and keyword, like on-page SEO and stuff. And
so back then you were ranking without building links. You were still getting traffic, or?
I would have done a lot better if I'd known about building links. Yeah, I mean, I went for some pretty long tail keywords. I didn't rank for anything difficult, but I was such a prolific content producer that I was able to get some keywords to like page 1, some keywords to position 1. And yeah, I was able to make like $100 a month, and then $150, and then $500, and so on. So I just did massive action. And eventually I was able to replace my teaching income and jump in full time with affiliate stuff. So probably took a year and a half.
Wow. During that time, that year and a half, you were going home from your teaching job and like just grinding it out writing, because just writing alone full time is exhausting, but to do that alongside a full-time job, it's really, really tough.
Yeah, well, my brother gave me an iPad. He ended up having 2 iPads, and he gave me one. And so I had this it was like an iPad 2, so it wasn't very good, but at the time it was cutting edge. And I got this app that was like Microsoft Word, but for an iPad. So my teaching job actually had a lot of downtime where maybe I'd have a class like 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. and then my next class wasn't until 4:30. So between 3 p.m. and 4:30, I would just I used to smoke, so I don't know if I still did back then, but anyway, no, I think I'd stopped already. I was going to say I would go out, have a cigarette, and then just write the rest of the time, but I think I literally was just writing. So I'd pull out my iPad and be like, I'd have my list of articles that I was going to write, and I'd just write on the iPad for like an hour and a half, which might get me 2 articles done. And then I would go home and I'd upload it to WordPress. So I think I used Dropbox, got the article from my iPad to the laptop, and then uploaded it into WordPress. So it was very efficient that like any dead time I had, I was writing. And then later on, I ended up moving like a 25-minute bus ride away from my school. So that entire bus journey was either listening to a podcast like Empire Flippers or Niche Pursuits or something like that, or writing an article on my iPad. And sometimes reading a blog and stuff. So it's pretty much all my spare time. But I was also living with my girlfriend, so that's a good hack because you don't have to. If you live with your partner,
Yeah.
they don't feel upset that you don't want to go out and do stuff as much because you're still spending time with them. Whereas if we lived apart, she'd be like, "Do you want to come over?" And I'd probably be like, "No, I'm working." So I think it puts less strain on the relationship as well. So that's an interesting. Just move in with them.
I mean, the other thing I was thinking was like, you don't get distracted by dating, like,
True. Yeah.
That's the other thing. Yeah.
Well, and she was also supportive. Like, yeah, there were times she wanted to go out and do stuff, and I just wanted to work. But she also thought it was cool that I had like a project and something I wanted to do. I think she thought I don't think she knew I was going to succeed or anything, but I think she liked dating someone who had ambition. So that side of my life was okay in terms of I did pretty much use all my free time trying to build the business, but my life was I think I was 27. I'd already been in Taiwan 4 or 5 years. So my life was in a place where I was able to dedicate that time to it.
How did you go from that point to I mean, I'm sure back then you weren't thinking, right, I'll build this up to the point where I'll buy a ton of websites, create almost a big company around that and then launch it publicly. How did you go from there to where you are now?
Yeah, there's a few steps. when I first started, I wanted to make 100,000 Taiwan dollars a month, which is similar to Thai baht. So it's it was about 3,000 US. But at the time, I think I earned say 50,000 from teaching. So it was double my income, and also 100,000 just felt like a lot of money. Like no one I knew in Taiwan earned that much, although it's not actually that much money. It's just everyone was an English teacher. So I was like, yeah, I'll get to 100,000, and then maybe I'll get to 150,000, and then I can pay someone 50,000 to run the business for me, and then I'll just play golf and relax. Yeah, that was my plan. But first of all, it turns out that's not actually that much money. You can't really upgrade your life just going from earning $2,000 a month to $4,000 a month. You kind of have to get to 10 grand a month to really level up. So I realized I needed to keep scaling, and also it kind of becomes addictive.
Yes.
I don't know if it's the money per se. It's more because you don't necessarily. I mean, some people go out and they spend all the money, so they need to earn more, but others just enjoy. It's like an achievement. So you're like, okay, cool, I've hit 5K a month. Can I hit 10? And then when you get to 10, you think, maybe I'll try and go for 20. So there was a little bit of that. And just I enjoyed business. So I just kept scaling and thinking, well, what's the next thing I could do? And once you've had a bit of success, you start feeling confident and getting maybe an ego or more ambition and belief. So you start thinking, okay, I can do something bigger.
Like a video game, isn't it? Sort of every time you level up, you want to see what's on the next level.
A little bit. Yeah. And I'd underachieved for most of my life, and suddenly being able to achieve stuff, you start compensating. You're like, yeah, I can screw you, 5th grade teacher. I'm gonna keep going. So anyway, so the way the steps actually worked out were I built a business called Human Proof Designs, where I originally did done for you affiliate websites, starter websites, did some training, keyword research, taught people how to do everything. But we also did services content, link building. And that was my first sort of real big success, because I was making a couple of grand a month from affiliate sites. But Human Proof Designs was when I started making 10K and 15K and had a couple of 20K months. And revenue-wise, we were at about sort of 80 to 100K a month. And obviously the profit was significantly lower than that, but that is enough to give you $1 million a year revenue business, which is a huge milestone. And then I kind of got sick of it because I just, I don't know, just didn't want to do it anymore. And
that's interesting. What, did you get sick of, was it the stress of clients, or managing a team, or just the business model itself?
I guess all of it, and some of it, So the clients were great, but when you're selling stuff to beginners, they're not always going to get results, kind of just because of the numbers. Like, not everybody succeeds. And a lot of them can't really afford to not get results. So if you sell someone something and they don't succeed with it, and they kind of really need to succeed, that has an emotional drain on you and on them, and you start becoming numb because you're like, well, not everybody's going to succeed, so whatever, but also just the nature of people. Like, my personal Facebook inbox became a customer support channel, and majority of the time I was happy to message people on Facebook, but sometimes it's like a Sunday night at 9 p.m. and someone's messaging you because they emailed your support team and didn't get a reply straight away, and you're just like, I don't want to deal with this right now. And like, no offense to that person, they're just trying to get their message heard. But you're just like, yeah, I'm trying to switch off right now. So there was a little bit of that. And also, like, as we scaled, the revenue went from like 50K to 100K, and I was responsible for a lot more people's paychecks, but I wasn't necessarily earning much more myself. I was like, wait, I was earning 5K when it was just me, and now I'm earning like 10K and I've got 20 people. Like, should I just fire everybody and go back to just me? And then I was like, no, I hated doing all that stuff. There's a reason I hired people. So you get this kind of, it gets draining. But I didn't sell because I couldn't think of anything better to do. And then what I started doing was buying websites myself, like off Empire Flippers. And I discovered that a lot of the human proof design audience actually had bigger budgets. Like, some people had 100K they wanted to buy a business with. They didn't want to buy a $500 starter site. And so they would say, I see you're buying established businesses. Can you teach me how to do that? Or can you help me do that? And I found out there was a little bit of demand for a service where we did that. And so I started on Folio, which originally we did this as a service. And I basically transitioned out of human proof designs, where I realized I want to do on Folio. I don't want to do human proof designs. I'm resenting HPD because it's in the way of my growth, but I'm also in the way of its growth. So I should sell so that I can take that money and focus on Folio, but also someone else can take over the business, and it's not going to get run into the ground.
Yeah.
And the person who bought it from me ended up doubling the profit. So, but I grew on Folio to double human proof design's profit in a short period as well. So it was kind of like, oh, it's a win for me. It's a win for him. It's a win for the team because they all get to keep their jobs. So it was just a great decision for him to buy it and for me to sell it.
How much does an agency like that typically get sold for?
Well, back then, the multiple I got was about 3.1, I think, which is a multiple of the annual profit. So the price just depends on the profit. Now it's higher because, typically agencies go for less than a content business goes for. I'd probably say like content or SaaS. SaaS gets the highest because of the recurring revenue. And then it might be like subscription, like a course or something like that, where there's a lot of recurring revenue. And then it might be a course or a content business that has a lot of repeat customers, because repeat customers are not recurring, but they're better than it's a good sign. So like at Human Proof Designs, we didn't have any recurring revenue, but 70% of our customers were repeat customers, which is why I got quite a good multiple. And then maybe FBA businesses are at the bottom. So you kind of a service is towards the bottom, but certain elements of a service can make it get a higher multiple. Like if you've got a lot of repeat customers or customers on a retainer or something. It really also depends on like how much is it reliant on the founder. And I had spent like a year or two transitioning away from me. So for example, I used to host the Human Proof Designs podcast, and then I got someone else to host it so that a buyer would not see that as an issue. Stuff like that.
Interesting. Yeah, so you basically got yourself out of the business completely, even on the marketing side, and then sold it.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of did what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Like it was still reliant on me to some extent, like people associated me with the brand, but we just did this transition where when it was sold, we said I was going to stay on as an advisor. And so some people didn't know if I'd sold it or if I'd hired a CEO to replace me. And then, over time, word got out that, and it was mostly the buyer who told people. So that was fine. Like, it's his risk. But by the time that happened, people knew he was running it and I was sort of focusing on Folio. So it didn't impact the business anyway.
So then after the agency life,
I started another agency. So Onfolio was originally an agency, just a higher ticket one. So there'd be someone who says like, hey, I've got 100K. I want to buy a business off Empire Flippers. I don't know how to find a good business. I don't know how to vet one, and I don't know how to run it after I buy it. So we would come in and say, well, we'll do all that for you. We'll charge you a management fee, a percentage of the profit, or the profit growth. That was what we did. And we scaled that we never had like $1 million revenue because we were just charging people management fees, but the profit was actually higher. And then after about 18 months, I was like, there's a big opportunity here. There's a lot of demand for this space, but I kind of don't want to do it as an agency anymore. And there were two reasons for that. The first was I felt like I was kind of done running an agency. And the second was I felt like there was a bigger opportunity. So I sat down and I wrote down pages and pages of notes about, should we do a holding company? Should we do a fund? Should we do this or should we do that? And around that time, someone messaged me and said, oh, you can actually take this company public. And I was like, cool, well, yeah, that sounds awesome. I'll do that once we're big. And they said, no, you can go public early and use being public as a way of growing, which was really interesting because I didn't know you could do that. And that's basically what we've been working towards for the last, I guess, 18 months, maybe nearly 2 years, actually. So it's not that easy. But basically, the idea is we just have our own capital and we buy businesses ourselves and run them. And then people can buy shares in Onfolio. So that'll be, just like a lot of people say, it's like the internet Disney's version of Berkshire Hathaway. I'd say it's different because Berkshire doesn't really operate the businesses they buy. Yeah. I'd say it's more like there's a company called IAC, Interactive Corp, or there's a British company called Future PLC. So we're more like them. Both of those are public companies as well. But yeah, that's the basic idea. So quite a step from teaching English, but here we are.
Bit of a step, yeah. That's true.
I mean, it's been 10 years. It was 2012 when I first started. So this is the abridged version of the story.
That's cool. So how do you find running a public company versus what you had previously?
Well, we're not public yet, but in terms of preparation for being public, it's just different. There's things you can't say. There's things that, I think the most frustrating things is like public companies can't say stuff about their plans or about their growth or some of the inner workings of the company, even though maybe like they're more legitimate than like a private company can kind of say anything in many regards. And they don't really have any evidence to back it up, whereas a public company is going through an audit and they have like all the evidence, but they can't make predictions because like public companies aren't allowed to make certain like statements and stuff. So it's kind of weird in the way that there's just certain things you can't do.
One of the things that would scare me is like, for us, we like to move really fast, but I feel like if you have certain audits or certain things you can't do, then maybe that would slow you down as a business.
Yeah, I mean, the worst thing about audits is that they're expensive, and building the systems to be able to audit efficiently, because you have to submit your financials every quarter, and then you have the big annual audit at the end of the year. So you have to be able to produce like a 10Q 45 days after the end of the quarter. And once you've got that regular rhythm, it's okay. But it took us a year really just to build the systems of being able to actually like do our financials. But it kind of levels you up in business as well, because you have smart people looking at your books and helping you produce them in a way that the SEC likes. And you get a CFO and it's like an MBA for sure. But it's also speaking to institutional investors and investment bankers. They have a very different way of looking at business and at the world than like the kind of traditional bootstrappy internet marketer. And so it's not necessarily better or worse, it's just different. So it kind of exposes you to a completely different way of thinking about business.
It's probably quite good in a way, isn't it? Yeah, in a way, it sort of reveals a totally different perspective that you might not have previously, right? More opportunities.
Yeah, it gives you a different way of thinking. Some of it, like, you just think, what? Why do you do it that way? That makes no sense. But other ways, you're just like, oh, I hadn't realized that. You just think orders of magnitude bigger, I think, is the big takeaway. It's so different. And I'm still so early in the journey of being a public company that you ask me this question again in 2 years, I might give a completely different answer. So
it's amazing that you've gone from teaching to this. Are you able to like reveal how much the company is worth?
No, we're about to refile. So by the time we file, by the time this, I don't know when this interview goes live, but basically like, a week from now, we'll have updated all of our public documents and everything with a new valuation, and people will be able to just look at that. So people can just Google. If they just Google like Onfolio S1, like S-1, it'll have like how many shares are in there, what price we're selling the shares at, and you can figure out the valuation from there. But anything I say now won't be accurate in a week. So there's no point in me saying it. So,
fair enough.
It's going to be 8 figures.
8 figures. How far do you want to take it? I mean, like you said, with an IPO, you think magnitude's bigger. Do you have like a sort of end goal in mind?
Well, there's no point doing what we're doing if we just want to, have like a $10 million business or a $20 million business. So it's hard for me to go out and say what I'm going to do, but there's hundreds of online businesses for sale at any given moment, like hundreds of millions of dollars worth of businesses for sale. And so there's no real ceiling on how high we can grow. You look at other companies like IAC is a $7 billion company, and they've already spun out a lot of their bigger businesses into separate companies. So they'd be probably 50 million or 50 billion if you looked at all their businesses. And Future PLC in the UK is, I think, a 5 billion company, and they're in the UK where the market caps are a lot smaller. Berkshire Hathaway is 620 billion or something. So are we going to build a company like that? Not necessarily. Like, I can't say, but it's not like there's a cap of just being $100 million company. Like, we can be $1 billion company if we want to. We just have to execute well. And, if we make mistakes, we make mistakes that don't crush the company. And just, it's going to take a decade, maybe 2, but I think we can get there. So I'm still pretty young, I guess. I'm 37.
Still a young whippersnapper.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like sort of public
definitely.
company CEOs outside of the tech world, I think I'm pretty young. So I was in a position, kind of, you might say, well, why go public at all? But I was in this position where I thought, okay, I've had an exit. I did okay when I sold HPE, and I want to focus on something that I'm happy to do for the rest of my life, or until I retire. And I think this has potential to be that thing, and it has potential to be very rewarding if I do focus on it for the next 20 years. So why not? And so that's kind of the best answer I can give is, I think we can be $1 billion company. I think we could be a 10 billion if we want. It'll take time and won't necessarily get there, but the opportunity is there for sure.
Yeah, it's amazing that you've got a business model that can actually scale to that point, right? Because there's some agent, for example, with the agency world, it does feel like there's a certain ceiling almost, unless you expand the services or the markets. If you look at your previous business models.
Yeah, that's kind of what made me decide to go for it, really. It was like, if I just wanted to build a smaller business, maybe I'd just raise money and do a fund or something. But I just thought, I don't know, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not go for it? Like, how do you feel with the economic climate and obviously there's a lot of people worried about recession and the way the economy is. With the funds that you run, do you feel like the economy would change?
It depends how long this goes on for. Like right now, the valuations of websites are still going up, which is kind of frustrating as a buyer. But if this uncertainty and continues and we do have a recession and it's like a prolonged recession, sometimes a recession only lasts 4 months. It just depends. Like the impact might be quite big. I think right now sellers are more willing to have less of the cash up front. So like, they still want the majority up front, but instead of 100% cash, they might take 70, or instead of 70, they might take 50. Or instead of a 1 year payback period, they'll accept a 2 year payback period. Certainly in the sizes that we play, like a 50K website, you're still going to have to pay it all up front. And I think if this gets worse, the market gets worse, stuff gets dragged out for a longer period, then you're going to see that happen even more, and maybe even start to see prices of businesses go down. So it's a good opportunity to be a buyer, I think. In terms of the wider investing world, I'm terrible at making predictions about that, so I'm not even going to try. But it's definitely going to be a transitory period. We just don't know really what that transition is going to be, but it's not going to be the same as the previous 10 years.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, in the online space, like if you look at, as you're probably well aware, like since COVID, in the online space, most entrepreneurs I know working online who have an online business have actually done really well out of it.
Yeah, I think certainly like most of 2020 and probably the first half of 2021, I think some of it's like pulled back now, gone back to where it was before. Like there's kind of a what's known as like the COVID bump, where businesses got a boost and then they return to normal. And then some advertising, like some of our advertising businesses, the payments for advertising are lower than they used to be. But yeah, apart from that, online business overall has had a large boost, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Just going back to the way that you buy online businesses and then you manage them within your business, how do you scale managing so many different businesses under one sort of roof?
Well, really the way to scale it is to not manage so many under one roof. It's to manage them under multiple people. So you kind of end up with this kind of hybrid model where you have some like in-house teams, like maybe an SEO team, or graphic design team is an easy one, like a marketing team, a paid ads team. And they're almost like mini agencies within the company, and they will service maybe most of your businesses. But the real thing you need is attention, like it's focus. So you need to have one person running one business or one person running like 3 businesses. It depends on the business, depends on the team that business has, depends on the individual's abilities as well. Like maybe some of our business managers could run 10 businesses fine. Others are best only running 1. Oh. And again, some of our businesses could be run as part of a portfolio. Others need a dedicated person. So that's kind of the hybrid model we have, where like someone runs 4 or 5 businesses and delegates to a team who help him. And then if he needs like graphic design, he goes to the Onfolio graphic design person who makes him a new logo or whatever. And then obviously you also have agencies that you can outsource work to. But agencies are never as good as, well, it depends on the agency and the industry, the thing that you're delegating. But generally, agencies don't care as much as you do about your business because they care about their business. So you often will get better results not using an agency. But only certain people can really justify building stuff in-house. So, the average person watching this should probably just use an agency. I know I just talked in a massive circle there, but it makes sense.
That's it. I mean, most clients who come to us, like they just don't have the team or the resources or even the knowledge to build that team themselves. So that's why they typically come to us.
That's kind of what I mean.
Yeah. When you say like you've got a business manager managing each business, and I'm just thinking purely in terms of how I would do it. Like you have it's almost like a CEO for each business or for several businesses.
Yeah, we call them mini CEOs, but yeah, CEO, general manager, that kind
but they're like 5 foot. Oh. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's normally me making the dad jokes. That was a good one. Yeah, exactly. Tiny little people we keep in our pockets. Sorry, carry on. I don't think you quite finished the question.
Yes, no. So I was just curious, like, how do you find like a CEO like that? Because it feels, the way that you explained it, it felt like it's quite casual for you to hire someone like that. But I do a lot of hiring, and I wouldn't know the first place to start to hire someone who could, say, run my business or run my agency.
Yeah, I think I'm just a casual person, but hiring that role is probably one of the most crucial things we do, and is one of the main buckets of my job. So, like as the CEO, I really think of 3 or 4 core things that I should focus my time on. Like one is trying to generate deal flow. One is sort of talent deal flow, like people. And one is kind of investor relations, and one is I think it's just those 3 really. And so going on a podcast like this, for example, kind of ticks all the buckets because investors can see me and understand how I think and decide if they like the business and they want to invest in it. People who want to sell their business maybe will be like, oh, maybe I'll sell my business to Onfolio. And maybe there's someone listening to this podcast who wants to work for us. And one of those people may be a very talented, like business manager type person. So a lot of work I do is designed to just get people into our kind of funnel or into our orbit so that when we need to hire someone, we've got people, either they've emailed us one day or like I just know them, or we create a job post and they apply. I think the real challenge is the majority of people who are good enough to run online businesses don't want to work for someone else. They want to run their own online business.
Yeah.
Which is fair enough. A lot of us, the problem I used to have before I saw it wasn't necessarily the case, and maybe the problem you have is actually there's more people out there who don't want to run their own business, and they're very capable people. But we're all entrepreneurs and we all hang out with each other. So we're all like, who would want to work for someone else? It turns out a lot of people actually want to work for someone else. So like, for example, Alejandro, who I think he worked for me for a long time, and then he kind of grew to the point where he was ready to spread his wings and go off and do his own thing. And he's kind of gone full circle and gone, actually, I preferred working for someone else. So now he runs one of the businesses in our portfolio. And he's doing a really good job of it because he's got that capability and that brain, but maybe he doesn't have to worry about payroll and a lot of the other kind of entrepreneurial burdens. So there's that element. Like, it's like, well, you just focus on growing the business and we'll focus on like, HR and all of that crap. And we'll give you a budget to grow. And other people, they want to be part of something bigger. They don't want to be lonely. We can give them shares in the company. So there's that element as well.
That must be a big sell.
So there is actually, there is actually a lot of, and there's liquidity because if we're public, they can sell their shares anytime, but still work for us. So there is actually a certain appeal that we have that maybe other companies don't have. And so there isn't really an easy answer to how we find them. It's kind of we market for people to join us just as hard as we market for anything else. But doing that is well worth it because like talented people want to work with other talented people. So you kind of put yourself out there and people will be like, yeah, I want to work with them. And I think the same would happen with you. Like someone from your audience would probably be interested in working for you just because they watch this podcast and they think you're a good guy. So it's kind of a big part of what I do.
That's interesting, actually. I never thought about that, but yeah, you should market just as hard to attract the right people into your businesses as you should to market your business and your service, right? Because your talent is like your biggest asset. Yeah. That makes sense. All right. Well, I'm just conscious of your time as well. Just one more question. I'm living in Bangkok, right? So there's a lot of English teachers over here. I'm sorry to bring it up again, but like, what advice would you give to someone who's trying to sort of get out of being an English teacher and not having that freedom and flexibility in their lifestyle? Because it's literally a question I got asked maybe 3 times last week by different English teachers.
I think the kind of 2 things you really need is you need a path and you need tenacity to stay on it, or even to jump off and jump onto a different one, because there's more than one path. You know, like in my experience, I read this thing, I tried that, didn't work. Read this thing, tried that, didn't work. Read this thing, tried that, worked a bit, and then tried it a bit more, worked a bit more, and then I tried something else, and that worked even better. So it was like, maybe you don't have to just try one thing and stick to it forever, because that could be the wrong thing. But if you just have to keep trying things and stick to them at least long enough to know whether, like, you know, because you're not going to hit a home run straight away. So you do have to, whatever path you pick, stick to it, you know, at least long enough to know whether you're just being lazy or whether there's a problem with the path or something. And it's kind of, that's really it. So like for me, I took a course. Like now there's so many how to make money with internet marketing courses out there. Obviously some of them are garbage, but a lot of them are really good, and they have a community around them, because it's not just a case, like you can't learn something just from buying a textbook. Like, you know, you go to school, you discuss the textbook in class with the teacher. You go to university, you discuss it with the teacher and with your colleagues. So having a course where there's also a community is a big part of it, and then just sticking to it. So I know that sounds really simple, but it's not necessarily that simple to execute on those 2 things, but that's really
like SEO.
What it is. Easy
to understand, how to execute.
Sometimes it's not even easy to understand. But yeah, I think it's like if you want to get good at a sport, you just have to understand the rules. You have to understand the idea behind it and what it is you're trying to do. And then you just have to keep practicing and keep doing it. So it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah, the best way to learn is by doing, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think the challenge is the feedback loop. So this is where it's just like SEO is. You could be doing, like with SEO, you could be doing all the right things, and you just need to do them longer, and then it will work. Like you could be position 11 in Google and you're getting 0 traffic. So you don't, I mean, of course you can use a rank tracker and see your ranking go up. But if you didn't use a rank tracker, you'd have no idea if what you were doing was working. But you're just a few rank jumps away from suddenly being able to get a load of traffic. Or, you know, let's say you're doing a backlinking building campaign and you've built 20 links and you've got no way to know if those 20 links are enough. And at the next Google update, you'll jump up. Or maybe you just need 21 links, you know, and until you get that one more, you won't see any results. Or maybe it's the other way, and actually links is not the problem at all. You're on page. Or maybe links is the problem, but these 20 links are shit. Or maybe, you know, there's so many things and you don't know because the feedback loop is so long. That's what the challenge is. So you just kind of have to do everything and do it for a long enough period, and eventually you start getting some results.
You figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I see. I feel like a lot of agents, you know, when I first started my agency, 2 of my best mates at the time were running the same thing. And they got to a certain level and just sort of packed it in and quit. And I feel like if they just kept on going like a little bit further, they would have reaped like much bigger rewards from doing what they were doing. It's just like they were that close. Yeah.
I had a customer once doing Lucrative Designs, and he was one of my first customers, and he didn't really have any sort of confidence or belief, but he kept going for a long time. And he ranked like position 7 or 8 for 2 keywords, and they were okay keywords. They were like, I don't know, 500, 1,000 searches a month, but they were buying keywords. It was like best soft tip darts or something like that. And he said, I want to sell my website. Do you want to buy it off me? And I like looked in Ahrefs or whatever the tool was back then. And I was like, you're so close. Just build a few more links, add a few more pieces of content, improve your own page, and you'll be making some good money from that site. But because up until that point, he'd made nothing, he couldn't see that he was that close to making, something worth sticking in for, because it's a jump. It's not like you make $0, then you make $1, then you make $2, then you make $3. It's like nothing. Suddenly you're making a lot of money. And so he was like, no, I want to sell the site. Do you want to take it off me? And eventually I was like, okay, because I knew when I bought it, I was going to make money and I wanted to be able to sleep at night. So I tried hard to persuade him to stick at it. And anyway, I bought it from him. I added a few PBN links because this was back when they worked. And I added I think he hadn't even put Amazon affiliate links on the page because he said Amazon pays too low. And I was like, so there's no affiliate links on this page. So I added a few buttons, click here to check out price on Amazon or whatever people used to do. Added a comparison table, added a couple of links. And that month, the site made $500. And I bought it from him for $500. So, that's not an example of why he was an idiot. It's it's just a good story of what you were saying. Like, people just see nothing and they don't realize how close they are.
It's
like
almost
meme, I don't know. There's a picture where there's
I know exactly which one you're talking about.
It's an axe pick, and they're trying to get some diamonds, and they've turned back at the last minute, not realizing that they were like one more.
It's just like the next wall. Yeah. I've seen that meme a lot. Yeah, I think that's it. Just keep going, but it is to the trained eye that you can see it more, right? If you've had experience.
Yeah, it's easy to say in hindsight. Yeah. So really, the job is for people like us to pass it on via podcasts, so that hopefully someone listening decides not to pack it in.
Absolutely.
And keeps going until they get that breakthrough.
That's it. Bit of motivation.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks very much for coming on the podcast, and really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's been good.